Welcome to Enjoy the Journey podcast, where we interview expert entrepreneurs and thought leaders to help guide you in pursuit of financial freedom. Presented to you by Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, where we help service-based business owners remove cash flow bottlenecks, maximize their profits, and turn business profits into personal wealth. G'day guys, this is Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, and we're here for another episode of the Enjoy the Journey podcast. And I'm super excited today to have a very special guest who I've known for a very long time, Peter Moriarty from itGenius. Now, Peter and I were originally introduced back in my really early entrepreneur days of the Entourage community with Jack Delosa. And I remember very fondly some presentations that Peter did that really blew my mind around the opportunities that existed around systems, IT, and scaling leveraging technology. Since then, Peter's been on an amazing journey in his business and been able to achieve some phenomenal outcomes and also help many of his clients do the same. So I'm super excited to share some of his genius, some of his IT genius through our conversation today. So Peter, thanks for joining us, mate. How's things?
Oh, mate, doing excellent. I am parked up in a camper truck at the moment, overlooking a little jetty and a beach, and I'm loving life.
It's amazing, mate. I've been following the journey and I'm looking forward to having a bit of a chat about that as we progress. But Peter, for those of you who don't know you, can you give us a little bit of an introduction about you and your business?
Sure thing. So our business is itGenius. We are a small business technology consultancy. And what we do is we help small business owners right from sole traders up to businesses with 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 staff and beyond with all things tech. And so for most business owners, that's getting their people with the right tools in their hands, making sure their processes are nice and tidy. And really the big picture idea is using technology as a strategy for growth and as a strategy for scale. You know, we look at businesses like the Ubers of the industry who come in with a new way of, solving a same problem, but using smarter technology. And we like small business owners to take on that ethos. And you could be any kind of business. You could be an events management company. You could be aluminium, manufacturing. It doesn't matter. But when you get your team on board and you have the right tools in their hands for them to be productive, and then you add some technology smarts into the way that you're doing business, we find that businesses grow very fast, become successful, and eventually get their end result, which is a business owner which has freedom. And for us, that's around the magic number of around 20 employees. If you can get to 20 employees, and that's what we try and graduate businesses to, then we know that you've got a few people in the right seats that allows the business owner to have a bit more freedom, a bit more time on their hands, and more profit in the business as well.
And this is super important. Like, you've been telling this story and getting people to buy into this vision for decades now. And I think it's really only been in the last 12 months and since the COVID situation where people have really started to embrace this and take this seriously en masse. But you've been well ahead of your time for a very long time. And I know you've been involved in this space, really trying to push the pace. So where did this all start for you, Peter? How did you land in this industry and how did you get to what is now itGenius?
That's an interesting story. I mean, I landed with technology when I was 11 years old. I actually started with a Steiner education. So I wasn't allowed Game Boys or computers or TV or anything like that. And then my parents split up and my stepdad had a computer and I was like, wow, what are these? And I fell in love. I think it's, my kind of technical brain. And so I, throughout high school, started a computer business, basically. I mean, my last year of high school, I did $30,000 in sales in consulting and hardware sales. And I didn't go to university. I pretty much jumped straight into the business full time. And, it started with helping people remove viruses from their computers and upgrade their RAM and things like that. And then eventually we turned it into a business consultancy and started working heavily with Google. Now, the remote work story is quite interesting because I read a book called The 4-Hour Workweek. I heard of this dream of being able to travel and design a life that I wanted to live based on my own terms. I just basically put that to work about 8 years ago. And so from about 6 years ago, I've personally been location independent. We made the radical move of our whole team being able to work from home, which comes with all of its challenges, but our team were all completely remote. And for a long time, we were banging the drum of business owners being able to let their staff work remotely and let their staff work more flexibly. Not so much because everyone, would want to work at home in their bedroom. It's not always the best place to work from. But I've always been a fan of flexibility. And, I've hated seeing my dad's a business owner and he's a builder, and he does a lot of time in the rough of the actual work. And I was always curious, well, Dad, why don't you travel more? And he says, oh, well, I've got to do work. I've always got to show up to the job kind of thing. And so trying to encourage our customers to think differently about, where and when they might work, it's just so life-changing for business owners. And particularly when you add into the mix international resources, so hiring staff in the Philippines or in other countries, you start to get ridiculous amounts of leverage in the business, and then you can kind of scale a business faster, which gives you, a bit of commercial advantage, which is pretty cool. But then at the end of the day, it's about you living the life that you want to live. Some of our customers, after they've worked with us and they're then able to work more remotely or work more flexibly. I mean, I always remember this one story of a customer who had an old school email system where he had to keep driving to the office to check his emails, which sounds ridiculous, but this was only about 5 years ago. And after we'd switched him to Google Workspace and, set up his Google Drive properly, and he had everything set up in place, he sent me an email and he said, Pete, I just want to let you know I'm sitting down watching my son play cricket. And I was never able to do this previously. Wow. And so it's the small moments like that. It's like doing the kids run, picking up your kids from school and then doing a couple of hours work from home. Or it's, maybe that staff member who has, an elderly parent to look after and they want to live in a particular location, but still want to stay connected to their work. It's giving that flexibility to everyone available in the business. And then you're not restricting your talent to the city that you're in. Yeah. Someone said to me once, if you're hiring people from just one city, you might be hiring from 1% of the population of that country, and that's 1% of the potential talent available in that country. And so, there's just so many benefits to opening up your workspace to a more flexible way of working. And thanks to coronavirus, now everyone sees it. Exactly. Not everyone's done it perfectly, and I get that. It's been challenging for some, but now at least everyone sees the possibility, and I'm pretty excited by that.
Me too, mate. Look, I think most of us as entrepreneurs have heard about these things that we're told that we need to do, like the E-Myth and the 4-hour work week. We're told to read these things. And I know I read the 4-hour work week on a plane to Brazil, and it blew my absolute mind. And I'm like, wow, how can I just bring this to life? What are the possibilities here? Because I think many of us have this kind of unconscious incompetence when it comes to actually winning back our time. And reality is most business owners have just created a job for themselves. In many cases, working more than what they did when they had working for somebody else. But I think it's people who actually implement it that makes all of the difference. And I see it all of the time, that there's individuals who say, oh yeah, when I get more free time from my business, I'm going to go overseas and live in Europe for 3 months, or I'm going to do a lap around Australia with the family when I'm 60 years old. And I've always been the person that kind of challenges the status quo and says, well, why don't you do that now? What was that turning point for you, Peter, where you realized that creating that location independence, creating this really international team, creating this opportunity and freedom and flexibility from your business was actually possible, and you saw that coming to life?
It was actually commercially driven for me, funnily enough. I accidentally stumbled into it. We were based in Sydney. The business was based in Sydney. That's where I'm from. I had the vision that I wanted to service customers all over Australia. And I knew that it was going to be pretty capital intensive to start plugging offices into every different city. Yeah. And so we started to shift the way the business was delivered to be able to deliver things remotely. Now, we're in tech, and that came with its challenges because, if a customer signed up in Brisbane or in Melbourne, they'd say, oh, well, how are you going to come and fix our router if it goes down? And we worked out partnerships with, hands and feet on the ground to work out those kind of things. But eventually it became, kind of weird that we had less than 20% of our customers in Sydney, and the rest were all over the rest of the country. And at that point, I kind of said, okay, well, let's shift our business model to being able to serve customers wherever they are, and let's do a little bit less of the on-site type stuff. And so that's how it kind of started for us. We just kind of naturally fell into it, and I just had this realization one day: oh wow, I don't actually have to be in Sydney anymore. And so I was able to then do a lot more travel, and eventually I decided to move. I moved up to Burleigh Heads on the Gold Coast. I don't like Sydney winters, so I decided to go somewhere a little bit warmer. And now I've done the radical step. I've done some nomadic travel on and off over the years, and now I'm actually traveling around in a camper truck.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to joining you at the end of March when I hit the road in my troopy, mate. So I'm sure there's plenty of stuff that you can teach me about your experiences to date. But what's
Absolutely.
been great, Peter, is that you've not only spoken about making this transition from creating this business that gives you freedom and fulfillment and opportunity, but you've also made the step out of technician phase into being a phenomenal CEO and thought leader. I think many small business owners just dream about this. It's what they ultimately aspire to do, but they get stuck in the doing. And you teach a lot about how being defensive of your time and how to be kind of a wartime and peacetime CEO, and how do you lead from the front without getting back into the trenches. So what's been your journey so far in terms of making that transition, and what could you potentially share with the listeners around your experience?
That's such a great question, and I'm reflecting on my journey of my growth. At different stages, growing the business and having read the E-Myth very early on, kind of understood and knew that the game of business is a game of taking hats off. And just every day taking hats off, giving them to other people. And, there's always this balance of delegating the right amount and keeping the critical tasks. So, obviously the first most important one you get off your hands is the delivery. You start hiring people for delivery, and then you maybe hire someone to manage delivery. Maybe you do finance next, and then sales would probably be one of the last ones that you give away. And I think, marketing and brand and promotion of the business is probably the very, very last one that you would actually take off in terms of hats. And so the core skill there is actually delegation. Core skill is delegation. And then, the skills become team building, the skills being the custodian of the brand and being the custodian and the cultivator of the culture within the business. I don't think those roles ever disappear for when you eventually ascend to the CEO position. There's different phases in that because like each business, if you imagine it as a staircase, you have periods of growth and then you have periods of consolidation and working things out. And if you have the fantasy that at some point it's all going to be, swings and merry-go-rounds and butterflies and rainbows and unicorns, at some point, that's not the reality. There's plenty of 8-figure business owners who wish they had a 7-figure business because the problems are smaller. When we were smaller, a bad month might be that we had a $500 loss or $1,000 loss. Now we had a bad month last year and we lost 35 grand. and those kind of things when they kick you in the nuts, it's a very different level. So I think what I've learned is you can certainly delegate and pass on a lot of responsibilities, but you can never abdicate the responsibility of the business as a whole. And the job of a CEO is survival of the organization. And I would say survival and expansion of the organization. That kind of becomes the key job. So how do you get there? I mean, in simple practical terms, Michael Gerber laid it out pretty easily in the E-Myth. You take a picture of your your organizational board that you have right now. And then you take your org board and you say, okay, well, what does this need to look like in 2 years or in 3 years' time? And then you work towards that. What kind of teams will we need to have? What will our commercial model look like in 3 years' time? What does the business actually look like? And that's absolutely up to you to design what that looks like around the lifestyle that you want. I know for myself personally that I wanted a business where I wasn't going to get pulled into big deals with, big shiny customers, right? We've got a few big keystone customers, but I said to myself, you know what, the kind of business that I want, I don't ever want to have to be pulled into a project meeting because it's a special customer and a special deal. I'm just really happy not to chase those deals. And so we decided to build a low-cost, volume-based business where we could service lots of smaller customers, and there were none of those larger ones. Now, could I go after those deals and make different kinds of money? Yeah, totally. But that wasn't going to work for me and my lifestyle. And so understanding, what kind of life do you want to live and how can you shape the business around that is something pretty important.
I think that's really key because I think for many of us, we're ambitious as business owners. That's why we got into business in the first place. And I think the biggest risk that we have is that we do chase the those ego-based clients, those ego-based opportunities. And then before you know it, and you just go, oh, wow, why did I do that? I've just ended up creating all of this extra work for myself because I want to look like a hero. And I'm sure it's tough because this has obviously been your baby for a very long time. And it must be difficult in some areas as you're continuing to grow and scale to let go of those reins that once upon a time you got probably a lot of fulfillment from. So what are some kind of the key things that allowed you to let go of those reins, to be able to delegate and then pass that off to the team, knowing that everything was going to be okay?
There's a lot to unpack there. And immediately I think of the repeated ego deaths that are served up as the business grows and as you're forced to grow personally, because the business is always going to be limited by the growth of the leader. And so that means if you want the business to grow, you've got to be full-time working on growing yourself. And that can be a bit fatiguing at times. It's certainly pretty challenging. But what I mean by that is that as business grows, you need to be ready to let go of your identities around the business. If all of a sudden you're not a salesperson for the business anymore and you need to let somebody else sell who is not going to sell as well as you, that's a little ego death you got to go through. If you've got to let someone send a broadcast and the copy isn't just quite as perfect as you would do it, then you got to let go of that too. What I kind of come back to when I reflect on that and growing the business and what works is your job is to empower people. Your job is to create a system of the business. Your job is as basically the mechanic tweaking the machine, building the business as an organism where customers come in and money comes out. There's a little bit more complexity to it than that. But one of the things that's really important to understand as a business owner is the value of your time, the value of your time that you're actually putting into something. Now, if you take roughly, I think it's 40 hours a week times 52 weeks, times those together, you get 2,080. And 2,080 is the number of hours that you have, number of working hours that you have per year to get your work done. So if you take your revenue for the year, your projected 12-month revenue, and this is the complete top line total sales, and I'm going to do that for me. I think we'll do about 5 million this year. So I'm going to divide that by 2,080. That gives me 2,400. That is my hourly rate. Basically, for every hour that I work in the business needs to generate a commercial result of $2,400. And so if I'm doing anything and it's worth less than $2,400 per hour, then I should be delegating that to someone else. And as the business grows, you can kind of like redo that calculation. I've got a little sticker on the front of my laptop here. It says, is this task worth $5,000 an hour? And that's my little metric. If I'm goofing off on Facebook, if I'm dicking around in Xero, clicking a couple of reconciliation lines because I get a little dopamine hit from getting things organized. Yeah. That's a little reminder to say, this might not be the best use of my time. It might be better to have someone else do that so I can focus on other more high value tasks.
And I actually borrowed this from you. It was a while back, and I think you're actually doing a nomad thing, and there was a photo that was taken kind of candid of you, and it had the sticker on the top of your laptop. And I think at the time it was, is this worth $1,000 an hour? It's great to see that that's continued to grow. And it's a concept that I took and I've started to try and implement into my own business. And I think there's so many business owners out there that are still doing $20 tasks. They're doing the tasks that just aren't best use of their time. And I think it's just one of these big things is about its energy and capacity management. If we've only got, say, that circa 2,000 hours a year to invest in the really high value stuff, do we want to invest that in the $2,000 tasks or the $20 tasks?
The whole conversation about bright, shiny object syndrome, which I'm sure you've covered before. The interesting thing for me as I've grown through the different stages of business is I found myself keeping busy for the sake of being busy. I've noticed entrepreneurs, and I certainly noticed this behavior in myself, using the business as a drug to keep me high. And I've struggled, I haven't had substance addictions, but I've struggled as a codependent in relationships. And I've been through recovery and understood just how many ways that I've soothed myself with food, with people, with all kinds of challenges. Yeah. And for me, business for a long time was my drug to basically keep me high. And working those 60, 80-hour weeks, it was great. I got an amazing commercial result as I was building the business. But now I find myself working just a couple of hours a week. And for me, I've got all of this free time. And so it's interesting how we can be attached to that idea of I need to be busy to perhaps keep yourself from feeling other feelings or, from other areas of the life getting attention. It might be family, it might be intimacy, it might be whatever. But the other thing is I noticed myself on my journey keeping busy because I wanted to be needed by my team. I'm Mr. Fix-It. Yeah. And I attached so much of my value from being needed, being the guy to answer the questions, being the guy to get things done. And so if my team had everything they needed to get the work done without me, it was kind of like, well, what's left for me? What's my job if I'm not helping people? And so I've, that's been its own level of like ego death and like, oh, well, I'm not actually needed anymore. And, the team now just kind of let me know, hey, Pete, don't worry, we've got this handled, because I find myself, getting in there and breaking things where I'm not needed. And I've got to be very, very disciplined now to only touch the things where I can actually provide value And it's funny, it's not many things anymore. I've got all the responsibility and not much control, which is another scary place to be in.
That resonates a lot with me, mate. I've been on this journey myself. Like, we've got a team of 27 now across 5 countries, and we've implemented a lot of stuff that you've taught. You've helped get me out of my inbox. You've helped us with setting up our tech stack, all of these great things that have really enabled that. But I do find myself wanting to get my hands in, and I make it worse. Just keep out of it. So the team have actually started creating memes about me of these things that I end up doing, and I've just got to just let go, which it is tough. It really is. So with that being said, if us reframing, because I think this is about us occupying ourselves and focusing on the right thing, the right North Star, the right measure of success, because particularly once we get to that point where our outcomes are no longer measured by the investment of our time, it's the impact of that time. And that time can actually be quite small. So how do you identify your top priorities and make sure that you've got that clear measure of success so you're not overcapitalizing and over-investing your time?
Yeah, great question. And I'd like to also kind of move on to what tools business owners can use, because I want to keep this, as practical as possible as well. I use a prioritization method that I learned from a 1980s sales trainer called Brian Tracy, who's absolutely amazing. And it's called the ABCDE method. It's basically tasks, urgency, and priority. And so for business owners who find themselves in overwhelm, or, you've got a to-do list a million miles long, if you just Google that, you'll find a YouTube method. And part of that process is to eat the frog every day, which is start with the toughest task first. And that is a muscle to work on. Again, that's something that you can practice. And I'm amazing at eating frogs. That one thing that I know is the thing that I don't want to do, I will make sure I do that first. And to give you the backstory on eating frogs, it's a Mark Twain quote that says that if the first thing you had to do every day when you woke up was eat a frog, everything after that would be pretty easy. You basically start with the toughest task first. And when you can work on that as a discipline, I call it, stepping up to the void and then leaning in and stepping in anyway. That feeling of discomfort of, I've got to get this thing done, but I'm not quite comfortable doing it. Tim Ferriss has this awesome quote, which is, your success in life is directly proportionate to the number of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have. And I like to kind of paraphrase that to, your success in life will be proportionate to the number of uncomfortable situations or uncomfortable actions you're willing to take. Of course, actions moving in the right direction. Let's talk about some other kind of basic strategies and more practical things. So you mentioned getting out of your inbox, which is something that's absolutely critical. If you, the listener, head along to our YouTube channel, we've got some videos on managing your inbox, and we even actually have a course. So if you're a customer of ours, you don't have to be a concierge subscriber. You just have to have your Google Workspace billing billed through us. Then you can actually get access to our inbox course that's in a free Google Classroom for our customers, which is pretty cool. But basically getting out of your inbox and managing your inbox is super important. But most people think it's just a matter of putting emails in the right folders, when actually most businesses have a pretty poor design when it comes to communication. And what I mean by that is, for many business owners, you're basically the conduit. You're the bottleneck between emails from your customers and the rest of your team. You're the person that everyone emails. And so if that's you, you need to take that hat off quick smart. And so IT businesses do this really well with a help desk. We have help@itgenius.com. Any of our customers can email that, and that is a shared mailbox that goes to all of our staff. Now, if you were to put me in any other industry, whether it be bookkeeping, whether it be legal services, whether it be trade, doesn't matter. I would set up a shared mailbox like that if I was running your company. And so I implore you to set up service at, or hello at, or help at, or team at, or whatever it is that you want at yourdomainname.com. You make that a shared mailbox, and then you start directing customer inquiries there. Now, when a customer inquiry comes to my email, if someone emails me directly, which people still do, I'll hit reply and I'll say, hey, thanks so much for getting in touch. Here's the email to get in touch with the team directly from now on. By the way, I'm just going to forward this to the team, and I'm going to get them to sort it out for you. And what that does is that removes you as the bottleneck for delivery to happen in the business. Now, we've got a really great shared mailbox tool which sits over your Gmail account, and that's called Hiver. And what that does is lets you set priorities, and you can assign an email to a particular person, and it's got customer service things built in. And so that's a nice little tech tool that integrates with Google if you happen to be using Google. But at a minimum, setting up a shared mailbox, whether you're on Google or Microsoft ecosystem, you can make that happen. The next one is to get rid of your mobile phone. And for many business owners, they think, oh, if I'm available all the time, that's great customer service. The problem is the moment you give out your mobile number, all of your customers just want to call you. Again, you are the bottleneck. And that's where we can start to feel chained to our businesses. And customers have poor boundaries sometimes. We've all got that one customer who likes to text us at 6 p.m. on a Friday night or on a Sunday afternoon, just, because they just want to reach out. But all of a sudden, that's interrupting your family time. And so when you implement a cloud-based phone system, our one that we resell happens to be called Dialpad, and it works with Microsoft and Google. What that gives you is a business number that comes with you everywhere you go. So your phone system lives on your computer, it lives on your mobile phone as well, so you can make and receive calls on the go. But someone's getting a local Sydney number if you're based in Sydney or Adelaide or Brisbane or Melbourne or wherever you are, and they're seeing a professional business number. Now, what I love about that is, and I took my mobile phone number off my signature about 6 or 7 years ago, customers don't call me on my mobile anymore. And if I'm off for the day, I have that number routed to someone else who can answer it. And then the best case scenario is that you have one number for the whole company, which actually gets routed to your team. Now, you can still use a direct line if you really want, but customers, given the choice, if they only have a choice to call your team, well, then your team are going to do a much better job at servicing your customers than you are. Because if you're the kind of person who has your mobile number available for everyone, then if a customer calls you, and let's say you're on site working with a customer for half the day, they call you, they leave a voicemail, and 4 hours later, they're angry because they haven't got a call back. Where if you've got staff waiting in the office to service them and they've not been able to service them, who's getting the crappy experience? Your customer. And so you really owe it to your customers to train them to work with your team. And that takes discipline from you. You are not at the behest of your customers. You have control. And so it's up to you to design the flows of customer service. So it's not all about you. They can be serviced effectively by your team. And then it just takes the kahunas to say, thanks very much for getting in touch, Mr. Customer. I'm going to have my team help you out with this.
I love that. Those are some great actionable tips. We've implemented both of those strategies with great results, although I still need to take my mobile number off my email signature. So I'm going to be doing that after this podcast. So thanks for that one, mate. And I think the other part is really having the right tech stack, Peter. This is so important to ensure that a CEO has visibility around what's going on, because I feel that many people who don't have the right technology systems lack that visibility. So they feel like they have to micromanage to understand what's going on. And there's also things around project management and whatnot. So what do you think would be the must-have technology platforms or tools that business owners need to be considering in 2021 to be able to grow and scale?
So complicated so quickly with this, because people really try and do too much, and there's so many bright shiny objects, and there's so many amazing mentors and educators who want to share with business owners what technology is going to help your business. But what we find is most business owners come to us in complete overwhelm. There's just too many options out there, and everyone is telling you need this CRM and you need this pixel tracking and you need to do this thing, and you need this password vault. And it just becomes too much. And so we've taken all of the different technology tools that you might need in a business, and we've laid them out on a roadmap, and we call that the growth roadmap. So we've got from the different stages of business, whether you're in launch phase and you're just a sole operator, to start up with a couple of staff, to growth stage where you're really working out the business model and you're between that 4 and 20 people, to scale stage 20 plus, and even to accelerate if you've got more than 100 employees in the business. And at each stage, there's a couple of critical things that you really want happening. For example, when you're a very early stage business in the launch stage, you want to make sure your files are backed up. You want to make sure your passwords are secure. You don't need to worry about a business dashboard with your KPIs and everything up on a TV in the office just yet. But then let's say when you're in the growth stage and you've got 4 or 5 people in the business, and maybe you're starting to put someone on for sales, and you want to make sure they follow a rigorous process for the sales, you want to have some kind of CRM type system. So you can make sure that your team are following a structured way of delivering sales in the way that you want it to be done, but also that that people are actually being followed up on time and you're getting good numbers on things like conversion rates. So I won't try and explain all of that in one go, but I will say head along to our YouTube channel. We've got a number of videos on the growth roadmap, or if you're interested in a map session, you can have a chat to our team. We do a free 20-minute consult. I'll share with you the growth roadmap and show you out what's there. But we've got a number of videos and playlists on our YouTube channel. So if you're a launch business, you just watch the launch playlist. If you're a scale business, you go watch the scale playlist, and there's heaps of videos there to share with you what you should be focusing on with your technology. I'll say at the end of the day, technology is about connecting your team and about being a tool for you to get more done. So it should support your productivity, should support your business objectives, and it should be used as a tool that's on your side rather than a scary black box that sits in the corner that you just kind of throw money at. And for many business owners, that's what IT has been for a long time. The traditional way of doing IT is you pay what is traditionally called a managed service provider a lot of money to manage your tech, and they just kind of like do their weird IT stuff behind the scenes in the background, and maybe you don't even know your own administrator password because they kind of do stuff. And for most business owners, they feel like they don't really have control or ownership of what's actually going on. And so our business has always been about liberating business owners and educating business owners to understand a bit more about what's going on with the tech so that you can be a technology leader in the business. We want you to lead the strategy. And it's a bit like your accounting. You can completely abdicate it and just leave it up to the accountant. But when you sign your accounts each year, you are taking responsibility and liability for everything that happens there. And it's the same with your tech. And so while a smart business owner will learn how to read a P&L and learn how to read a balance sheet and learn the basics, you don't need to necessarily know how to reconcile everything in Xero and know how to balance the books when it comes to tax time. But what you do need to know is how to direct your accountant. For you to actually be a strong leader and for you to be a CEO of a business, you need to know that the buck stops with you. And so you've got to work on that skill. And so our aim as a consultancy is not just to implement the tools and provide best practice and provide training for your team, but for you to grow yourself as a technology leader, because then you can run the kind of business which will be like an Uber. You'll go into your industry and you'll use technology as a strategy to get a strategic advantage over your competitors, and to actually build a phenomenal business and build a great team with that as well. And so that's really our aim. And that's what lights me up. I've been in a space of at least, let's say, 3 or 4 years now of basically semi-retirement. Like I ticked the box in all my income goals, and I'm pretty damn happy now just to optimize my time. But what does really light me up right now is to help business owners to build great businesses where their teams are happy, they have heaps of freedom, everyone's making money, the customers are happy. And I think that's a better world. When we've got happier companies, I think we've got happier people. And I think that's a good thing that we can do.
I love that, mate. I think this is going to enable the growth of the economy into the future, because small business is really where the future is. And I think if more small businesses can be enabled using these technology solutions, then the world's going to be a better place. So I love what you're doing,
Absolutely.
mate.
We're literally a country of small business owners. And if you look at the Bureau of Statistics, 98.5% of all businesses in Australia have less than 20 employees. Now, there's a good chunk of those that are self-managed super funds in those stats, but there's about 300,000 or 400,000 businesses between 1 and 20 employees in Australia. It's literally the whole country. There's only, I think, 6,000 which have above 200 employees. And so I'm very proud that our country is a small business country. I'm a son of a small business owner. My dad's a carpenter builder and he runs his own business, and I still haven't got him onto Xero yet. He's still on MYOB. We have arguments about it every time we spend time together. And, but I see his challenges as well. Once a quarter, he says, oh, it's tax time, and he locks himself in his office for 3 days doing it himself. And I just think, oh my God, you're still doing this. I'm all about helping business owners see that technology can be on their side. Now, I pay my dad out a little bit about the tax stuff, but he's actually quite tech savvy, and he likes to take credit for getting me into computers, because he bought me a computer book and got some computers for me to play with when I was 11 or 12 years old. But I got him onto Google Workspace, and he uses Google Drive to store his photos, and he uses Gmail for all his emails, and he forwards his whole Big Pond emails from 20 years ago into his Google account, so he's got everything in one place. Yep. And that means that when he's on the go, he's got access to everything. And so, little small things like that, no matter where you are on your tech journey, if you can use a bit of tech to get on your side, then that's a good thing.
Small steps make a big difference, right?
Yes, exactly.
So Peter, there's been so much value here today. I'd really like to summarize this in the top 3 actions. So anybody who's listened to this, if they had to go and implement 3 key things, or consider 3 key things to really make the most of all of the value that you've shared, what would those 3 things be?
I think if people did 3 things, that would be to calculate your time and, ask yourself 10 times a day, is this task worth my hourly rate? And if it's not, you delegate. And so number 2 skill is learning to delegate really, really well. If you Google, there's a couple of frameworks, I think the 5 stages of delegation or the 7 stages of delegation, and just get really, really good at that. That's basically the core skill. And, there's more practical things like building an intranet site to document your systems and processes and check out our YouTube channel. We'll teach you a little bit more about how to do those things. And then I think the final one is is really getting good with the discomfort of saying no. It's challenging for us to be in business, and for many business owners, we get into business because we love helping people. Steve Jobs, I think it was, says that you'll be successful because of what you say no to, not because of what you say yes to. And so practicing that as a skill, it is excruciating, especially when you say no to a friend to jumping straight on their podcast. And you have to continue to say no, now's not the right time, now's not the right time. But when you have this as a practiced skill, when you do show up and when you do say a yes, it's an F yes, and you can really show up in your best self to serve everyone around you.
I love that, mate. Fantastic. And look, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people who listen to this or watch the videos as part of this podcast that want to get in touch and leverage your team's services at itGenius. So how are people best to get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, look, if you're already a Google Workspace customer, that's the primary application that we're known for and we work a lot with, as well as plenty of other small business technology tools. You can actually start working with us. If you've got a billing relationship with Google, you can head to itgenius.com/transfer. And what that will let you do is actually transfer your billing to us. Costs you no extra, but you get a bunch of benefits. You get free access to our classroom. And in that Google Classroom, we've got training and onboarding videos for all of your staff and even certificates for them to learn how to get the most out of Google Workspace. So if you want some training there and a little bit of free support from our team, then head along to itgenius.com/transfer. But if you're new to the Google world, maybe, or you just want an overall audit of where things are at with your business, head along to our website, itgenius.com. You can jump onto a free consultation with our team. They'll take you through the growth roadmap and see where you're at in business. See if there's any spots that you've missed on your, growth journey. Like maybe you don't have your backups perfect, or you don't have a good task management system put in place yet. And we'll make sure that, the blanks are kind of filled in there. And if there's an opportunity to work together, great. If not, we've got plenty of resources for business owners of all sizes. And so, if you're interested in having a chat to our team, they'll have a chat to anyone. And we've got heaps of partners as well. So if you come to us and you say, hey, you know what, I really need some help with my Google ads, or I need some help with my website, or this CRM system isn't doing something exactly, and it's something outside the scope of what we do, because we've worked with literally tens of thousands of business owners and their employees. We have partners for pretty much anything you might need to get done in business. And so we've got resources for you and partners to introduce you to if it's not something that we can help with.
Amazing. It's super valuable, mate. I really appreciate you making the time and sharing some great value bombs with the listeners and the audience. So guys, we'll keep those links in the show notes for you so you can get access to all of that, and make sure you do leverage it. We've been customers of itGenius for years now. They've always delivered a phenomenal service and they always go above and beyond. So Peter, mate, I really appreciate it again and looking forward to catching up. This has been another episode of the Enjoy the Journey podcast. And guys, we look forward to catching you next time.
Thanks so much for having me. See you guys.